Hello and welcome to Freedom News, the news you can use to help keep Canada free. Well, today's the continuing saga of the SNC Lavalin scandal / cover-up from the Justice Committee, and oh, what a cover-up. At the beginning, we have Pierre Poilievre putting forward a motion that was okayed by the Liberal chair. It goes around to debates between the members of the opposition parties, and it finally gets over to a snake of a Liberal MP, that's not even a regular member of the committee. Well, I've set it up. It's a bit of a long video, but it's well worth the watch. This is disgusting.
Bonjour tout le monde et bienvenue.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Standing Committee on Justice and Human Rights. It's a pleasure to welcome you all here today.
Fresh and friendly faces at the table, so welcome for those of you who are not normally part of our committee. Today, we've been gathered. The four opposition members of the committee have asked for requests for a meeting pursuant to Standing Order 1064. To discuss their request to study developments in the accusation that the Prime Minister and his... Well, I won't even go into that. I will just say that I'm going to turn the floor over to Mr. Poilievre to explain the rationale for the meeting and take it away.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to move my motion first and then begin discussing it, or would you rather I do it in reverse order?
Whichever you prefer.
Okay, I have a motion here that following the public statements of March 6th by Ms. Jody Wilson-Raybould offering to provide more information to Canadians should it be requested, the committee requests that she appear no later than Thursday, March 14th.
Thank you very much. Mr. Poilievre, Mr. Poilievre, basically, at the last meeting, the motion that the committee had adopted was that the committee consider next steps and potential additional witnesses on Tuesday, March 19th, 2019. This motion would negate that motion. It would go against the spirit of it. So my recommendation to you for the motion is that you say in the scope of your motion, notwithstanding the motion that the committee adopted at its previous meeting on March 6, 2019 at the beginning of your motion.
That is fine.
Okay. So then the motion is receivable. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We are back here today to discuss whether the Prime Minister interfered politically in the criminal prosecution of a Liberal-linked corporation, SNC Lavalin. The request is for Jody Wilson-Raybould to have the opportunity to complete her testimony. You will recall that Ms. Wilson-Raybould was not allowed to complete her testimony at her last appearance.
Point of order, Mr. Clerk. I just saw someone taking a picture of us. So please, I want him to erase it, please.
Absolutely. We didn't see that, but please, would you mind? Thank you very much. Merci, Monsieur Berthold. Please continue, Mr. Poilievre.
Yes. So Ms. Wilson-Raybould was not permitted to complete her testimony. The Prime Minister granted her a limited waiver, applying only to the period during which she was Attorney General. However, after he removed her from that position, she witnessed events that were so egregious, she considered it warranted her resignation from cabinet altogether. Canadians deserve to know what those events were. So far, the Prime Minister has kept in place a partial gag order preventing them from finding out. If I could make an illustration of that gag order, let me read back into the record an exchange at this committee between the Honourable Lisa Raitt, Deputy Leader of the Conservative Party, and the former Attorney General. For clarity, can you tell us what you discussed with the Prime Minister at your meetings in Vancouver on February 11th? Jody Wilson-Raybould. I cannot. Can you tell us why you resigned from Cabinet? I cannot. Can you tell us what was discussed with the Cabinet on February 19th? I cannot. Ms. Raitt then asks, if the issues surrounding your ability to communicate these conversations to this committee were resolved, and you were able to be released from cabinet confidence or from privilege, would you be willing to return to this committee and give us testimony again? I would be, she answers. In other words, this is not just another kick at the can. This is, the motion proposes to give Ms. Wilson-Raybould her first opportunity to tell the full story. Now, members across the way may try to come up with excuses for silencing her and preventing her from speaking on behalf of the Prime Minister, who's indicated he does not want her to say any more. So one of the excuses might be, it'll take a lot of time. We should be focused on other things. Well, Parliament can walk and chew gum at the same time. We have numerous parliamentary committees that can work on budgetary matters, environmental matters, legislative matters in other places. We have a Parliament of two chambers which can debate any other matters at any other time, even while Ms. Wilson-Raybould is testifying here. So there's no reason why Cabinet can't continue doing its work on a whole range of other issues through its regular meetings while she comes here and testifies. In other words, there's no reason why the business of government and Parliament cannot go on while Ms. Wilson-Raybould is allowed to complete her testimony. Second, they might say that the matters that she would discuss are out of bounds, that they happened after she left as Attorney General, and therefore they are not up for discussion in this study. Well, that would be a funny excuse, because the Prime Minister and Gerald Butts have both made comments that zero in on the time period about which Ms. Wilson-Raybould is forbidden to speak. So they can speak about it. They can talk about those time frames. They can give specific interventions about what went on after she was removed as Attorney General. But so far, she cannot. So it's not out of bounds for them. Therefore, it must not be out of bounds for her. And finally, some might say, well, she had an awful long time to speak already, and therefore she doesn't need to speak again. Well, as I pointed out, there are, as she has pointed out, in a letter to you, Mr. Chair, she specifically highlighted the restrictions that she was under while she was here the first time, and indicated that there are additional material events that occurred outside of that way that she has not been permitted to speak about. Those events, of course, being so severe, so important, and so egregious that they caused her to resign from Cabinet altogether. Now, we know her resignation was linked to this particular scandal. She has not been able to tell us exactly what triggered the resignation, but we do know that it was in relation to the Prime Minister's political interference to shelve the criminal charges against this Liberal-linked corporation. In other words, it is pertinent to the terms of this particular study. So I think the ball is in the court of Prime Minister Trudeau, and it is for him and his representatives to explain what harm would it do if she were to complete her testimony. How would the public interest be diminished if she were allowed to come back here and tell the things that she was forbidden to say last time? What harm would it cause Canadians to find out the whole truth? I can think of nothing. And so we've heard the first part of the truth, but the rest of the truth remains a secret. We simply ask that the committee agree that she come back here, that the Prime Minister lift the remaining partial gag order, and that we let her speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Polyev. The clerk is keeping a speakers list, so right now I have Ms. Ramsey, Mr. Berthold, Mr. Drouin. And then Mr. Cooper after Mr. Drouin. Anyone else? Okay, so right now, Ms. Ramsey. Ms. Ramsey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The point in time that we've arrived at is one that is filled with questions. There are half-truths, there's changing stories, and people around the country are watching what's happening. And unfortunately today, they don't have answers to many of the questions that they're posing. Ms. Wilson-Raybould, has been asked to come back and testify. And if the Liberals don't want to hold an independent public inquiry, which is something I think we've been clear we believe is an important step, then they must allow this committee to do its work. And that means inviting Ms. Wilson-Raybould back. The clerk of the Privy Council, Michael Wernick, was allowed to come back and rebut testimony. And Canadians are viewing his return as being fair in the same way that they're viewing Ms. Wilson-Raybould's return as being fair and an important part of the rest of this story. And to be quite honest, it's categorically unfair not to extend her the same courtesy. She's also said herself that she would like the order in council amended so that she can speak to the matters after January 14th. And I can quote her from her testimony here at the Justice Committee on February 27th, where she said, "My narrative stops here. I must reiterate to the committee my concern outlined in the letter to the chair yesterday. That is, the order in council 2019-0105 addresses only my time as the Attorney General of Canada and therefore does nothing to release me from restrictions that apply to my communications while I proudly served as the Minister of Veterans Affairs and in relation to my resignation from that post or my presentation to Cabinet after I resigned." Those are her own words about her desire to be able to speak about what happened past that period. Mr. Butts and Mr. Wernick's testimony was at times inconsistent with what we heard from the former Attorney General. And it's imperative that she has the opportunity to address these points in the same way that was afforded to Mr. Wernick. Liberals really need to treat this with the seriousness that it deserves. And this can't be something that is pushed to the side under some guise of the fact that this is typically discussed in camera or the fact that it hasn't happened before. We are in uncharted waters here in what's taking place around this particular issue, and so we need to behave appropriately in a way that will reflect that, and that means having her come back to the committee. This is something that New Democrats have heard when we've been in our constituencies the past couple of weeks. It certainly has been the dominating headlines across the country. All of the major news outlets are writing stories on the fact that we don't have the full truth, and that is because we don't have the period of time that Ms. Wilson-Raybould simply cannot speak about. So this is about transparency. This is about accountability. And these are things that the Liberal government ran on, as the Liberal members know well here at the committee, and this is a test of that. This is a test as to whether or not those are just words or whether there's actually meaning behind those words. And today is an opportunity for the Liberals on the committee to revisit having her come before the committee and the importance of that to Canadians. I can tell you that, we're being flooded in our offices, New Democrats, with people. I've had people walking in my office who are talking about what is happening, asking questions that we simply don't have answers to. So that's what we're seeking here, is to be able to have this lifted off of her so that she can speak, as she has indicated publicly and here at the committee that she has a desire to do. Canadians want the other half of the story from her, and she deserves an opportunity in the same way that Mr. Wernick did to be able to come and to speak to what has been said about her and things that she has not had the privilege to be able to speak about. So lastly, the committee must recognize that there's a degree of urgency around this, and there is no good reason that can be presented today why Ms. Wilson-Raybould can't return to the committee to testify.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ramsey. So right now, Monsieur Berthold, Mr. Drouin, Mr. Cooper, Mr. Barrett, Mr. Poliev are the next people on the list. Monsieur Berthold.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Allow me to reread the motion that we're debating here that was tabled by my colleague. That, following the public statement of March 6th by Ms. Jody Wilson-Raybould offering to provide more information to Canadians should it be requested, the committee requests that she appear no later than Thursday, March 14th. Now, it's a simple motion, Mr. Chairman, and it's something we've heard called for over the past few weeks from people we've met with, from commentators as well. Why has Ms. Wilson-Raybould been prevented from providing her version of the events that have led us to be here today? Now, there's an attempt to imply that nothing happened, that it was routine and that differences in perception exist. Mr. Chairman, that's not what happened. What happened was there were resignations. One was demoted. The primary principal secretary to the Prime Minister resigned. And this has taken on such a scope that confidence in the Prime Minister has been shaken. Why not hear from Ms. Wilson-Raybould again? Because she herself said that she didn't have an opportunity to say everything. She said that she was limited on February 27th, that certain aspects couldn't be discussed. And I'd like to reiterate that in the letter that she wrote on the 26th, where she talked about the evidence she would provide the next day, she was told that she had a limited waiver, and it said it doesn't allow me, and I'm quoting from the letter, to disclose the content of communications while I was Minister of Veterans Affairs, nor with respect to my resignation from the position. And, Mr. Speaker, the letter also says that it doesn't free me from restrictions to speak freely about events that allow me to speak freely about the events that occurred following my time as Attorney General. Now, if Minister Wilson-Raybould is saying that she can't talk about the events that unfolded following her leaving the Attorney General's position, it's that there are events, incidents that occurred, and coincidentally, we heard other people talk about those very same events. Mr. Butts, Mr. Trudeau has also referred to the events following that date in January. But unfortunately, Ms. Wilson-Raybould said in her letter of February 26th that she wasn't in a position because the Order in Council did not allow her to do so. Allow me to go back to what she said on the 27th when she was questioned by my question, Lisa Raitt. And I'll quote the excerpts from that evidence. The Honourable Lisa Raitt. For clarity, could you tell us what you discussed during your meetings in Vancouver on February 11th? The reply from the Honourable Jody Wilson-Raybould, I cannot. Another question from the Honourable Lisa Raitt. Can you tell us why you resigned from Cabinet? The answer from Ms. Wilson-Raybould, I cannot. Another question by Ms. Raitt. Can you tell us what was discussed at Cabinet on the 19th of February? Answer from Ms. Wilson-Raybould, I cannot. Another question that will show that Ms. Wilson-Raybould was prepared to speak. Ms. Raitt, if you cannot provide, or if it were lifted and you were able to be released from privilege, would you be prepared to come back before committee and to testify again? The answer from Ms. Wilson-Raybould, yes. So it's clear. It's very clear that Ms. Wilson-Raybould has other comments to make, things to say, and people would prefer her not to do so. And it's clear that at this point, there are people who are prepared to enable Ms. Wilson-Raybould to provide the truth on the situation, how she experienced them.
It would be very easy for the Prime Minister to tell the members of his caucus that, yes, we will allow the committee to hear from Ms. Wilson-Raybould, and Canadians will have access to the full truth told by Ms. Wilson-Raybould. I don't think it's acceptable for people to have things said about them when they're not able to deliver testimony themselves about those exact events. Mr. Chair, there are a number of details which are currently not known, which are hidden, which are unavailable to us, and many people are trying to prevent us from having access to that. For a week now, I've been traveling all across Canada, speaking to people in my riding and elsewhere, and they want to hear Ms. Wilson-Raybould's truth. So, given that this committee has allowed some aspects of this to come to light, why would the committee not allow Ms. Wilson-Raybould to come back and testify? I think that the Prime Minister needs to give a clear authorization to committee members to allow Ms. Wilson-Raybould to give her full version of the truth and to make that truth known to all Canadians. I think it's important, and that's why I will be supporting this motion. Now, if the Prime Minister has nothing to hide, he shouldn't fear Ms. Wilson-Raybould's testimony. Thank you.
Mr. Berthold,
Thank you very much, Mr. Berthold. Just want to mention to committee members, you quoted Mr. Poilievre's motion, but we actually amended it to say, notwithstanding the committee's decision from March 6th. So I just wanted to clarify that. I agree, Mr. Chair. I just didn't have the updated version of the motion. Of course. I just want to make sure that everyone knows exactly what we're discussing. Mr. Drouin. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. As you know, I'm not a regular member of this committee. But like everyone here, I think that I had the opportunity to watch the events of March 6th. And I watched what happened then, and I remember well that the committee had passed a motion that the committee consider next steps and potential additional witnesses on March 19th, 2019. So in that spirit, I propose that the committee do now adjourn.
Point of order. Point of order. Point of order. Point of order. Point of order.
the clerk has advised me that's a non-debatable motion, non-amendable
Before that
motion.
happened,
So we
we'd have a point of order, and that does take precedence.
well, the question is, I'm asking you, does the point of order take precedence? I don't think so. I have to
Point of
vote,
order.
right?
Point of order. Point of order.
Point of order.
Point of order. Point of order.
Mr. Poilievre, what's your point of order?
My point of order is that right now we are debating a motion that I put forward, and you acknowledged that it was duly placed before the committee. The member across the way is stripping members of their ability to speak on behalf of their constituents here in this committee, which is a delegate assembly of the House of Commons. We have the right to speak. Numerous people remain on the speakers list. It is right in the standing orders that members of Parliament have the ability to speak, and I'm speaking, and I'm speaking right now. I know that you want to silence the debate. You want to shut your government has attempted.
Mr. Poilievre, can you get to your point of order? Can you get to your actual point of order?
I actually have started my point of order.
Well, right now,
and
it has to be an actual point of order. So
it is indeed a point of order.
So let me.
It is indeed a point of order, and I appreciate that this is a very uncomfortable subject for the Trudeau majority on this committee. But while the Prime Minister is trying to silence his former Attorney General, he will not silence members of the official opposition.
So at this point,
And
this is a
we
point
are
of
asking-
debate. We're going to move to a vote. We're going to, because I've spoken to the clerk, and at this point you haven't raised a point of order. You've raised a point of debate.
This is an attempt to shut down the
Okay,
debate.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move to a vote. All those in favor of the motion?
Recorded vote,
Like a recorded
please.
vote, please, Mr.
Recorded vote.
I have another point of order.
Mr. Clerk,
I have another
we had a
point.
request for a recorded vote. Please proceed to the roll call.
Mr. Chairman, I do have another point of order.
Yes.
This is a cover-up.
Mr. Essassi?
Favor of the motion? Yes.
Monsieur Drouin? Madame Lapointe? Mr. McKinnon?
What a shame.
De
Mr.
quoi avez-vous
Barrett?
peur?
Cover up.
No, it's a cover-up. I'm voting against
Mr.
the
Cooper?
cover-up.
I'm voting against this cover up.
Mr. Poliver?
Against the cover-up.
And Ms. Ramsey?
I'm strongly voting opposed, and I'm shocked at the behavior of my colleagues.
Despicable.
It's disgusting.
So that being
You
said,
should be ashamed of your...
that being said, the motion is adopted. Meeting is adjourned.
Why you ran? To cover up the Prime Minister?
Of course, you have noticed that my video is a bit skewed, not exactly showing everything. That's because, see, normally I would be able to use the edit and download clip function that is part of the R Comments website. It's been removed completely. This is a feature that enables our MPs to make clips of what happens in committee meetings and House of Commons, help get the word out. People like me make use of this too. Well, it's gone. So, talk more about cover-up, censorship. We can't easily make videos. I have to use my own software to do a screen capture, and it doesn't always look as great. So there's another thing these liberals are doing, making it harder for us to get the truth out. Disgusting. Well, that's all I have for today. Like if you like, share, comment, and of course, subscribe. And remember, working together, we can help keep Canada free. Thank you, and have a good day.